On behalf of the Sustainability Reporting Standard Board of ICAI, I, Jyoti Singh, extends a warm welcome to all of you to the 33 session of our webinar series, Demystifying Sustainability Catalyzing Growth. Today's session is centered around a critical theme, how leading companies are embedding ESG in operations. We are honored to have with us our esteemed speaker, CA Garima Batraji, and our moderator for today, CA Bharti Parikhji and CA Jasbir Basuji. Let us now begin. I would like to invite CA Bharti Parikhji to kindly take the session forward. Sorry, I would like to request CA Jasbir Basuji to please take the session forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to introduce CA Garima Batra. CA Garima Batra is the founder and CEO of Bismode Global Private Limited, a tech-enabled business consulting firm, a chartered accountant, certified fraud examiner from the USA, and company secretary. She brings over 7 years of expertise in enterprise risk management, risk-based internal audits, fraud risk assessment and investigations, internal controls, and business process optimization. With experience at Deloitte and across sectors such as iron and steel, IT, FMCG, and fashion, she has led major business transformation initiatives focused on enhancing productivity, profit, and positioning. Garima has designed and implemented end-to-end risk management solutions that strengthen internal control frameworks, improve operational efficiency, and deliver significant cost savings. A sought-after speaker and corporate trainer, she has conducted impactful sessions on risk management, internal audits, fraud prevention, and ESG for ICAI's Western Regional Council, management associations, global corporations, consulting firms, and academic institutions. Please welcome CA Garima Batra. Over to you. Thank you, CA Garima Batra.
Garima ma'am, we have Arpit Kabra sir with us. He is our Central Council member. I would request Jasbir Basu ma'am to please introduce our speaker who will give the special address. Ma'am, please start with the address.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Jyoti, for Uh, Today we have CA Arpit Kabra with us, and to define him, it's quick decisions, swift execution, and impactful results. These define the action-oriented, results-driven personality of CA Arpit Kabra. CA Arpit Kabra is a young, dynamic, and visionary leader who has made a significant impact in finance, forensic accounting, and leadership. As one of the youngest Central Council members of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, he has demonstrated leadership, innovation, and commitment to advancing the profession. A BCom from Mumbai University, he is a CA and CS and is pursuing LLB. Arpit has led progressive reforms, technology-driven initiatives, and skill development programs benefiting members, professionals, and students. His passion for empowering the next generation has resulted in pioneering initiatives that enhance knowledge, ethical leadership, and career opportunities for aspiring chartered accountants. A tech-savvy problem solver, Arpit sir never accepts no as an answer, ensuring that every challenge is met with practical, innovative solutions. His forward-thinking approach has transformed the way chartered accountants engage with forensic accounting, corporate governance, and business restructuring, setting new benchmarks in the profession. His passion for learning and sharing knowledge has led him to conduct over 419,000 man-hours of training. His remarkable contributions have been recognized on both national and international platforms, including the prestigious International Excellence Award at the British Parliament in London. Beyond his professional achievements, he actively contributes to society's growth and promoting mental health through EQ, emotional quotient. He believes in the power of meditation and is a keen art of living follower, committed to spreading the power of meditation to the youth of the nation. Partner Forensic and Stressed Assets Advisory at JC Kabra and Associates, Chartered Accountants, have head office in Mumbai and 13 offices with a team of 180 people throughout India. He is an exemplary speaker with passion for inspiring professionals. He has launched a YouTube podcast channel, Victory Talks and Skills with Arpit. With a visionary mindset and a deep understanding of learning, CA Arpit Kabra continues to inspire, lead, and drive meaningful change. We welcome CA Arpit Kabra, and over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasbir. That was indeed overwhelming. And Jyoti, great work done. I think one of the very, very important webinars that we continue to do and host, and the ESG, initiatives really help a lot of people clear their myths, their, what's happening around in this space, and of course, new opportunities that are exciting. I'm sure today Garima would set up that for all of you. Um, uh, Preeti Savla ji and Sanjeev Singhal ji, I think both of them, congratulations. I think, great work being done under their leadership in this committee. To all the chartered accountants who are here, am I audible? Sorry.
Yes, sir, you are audible. We are having more than 150 chartered accountants who have joined us.
All right, wonderful. So, first of all, again, congratulations to Sanjeev Singhal ji and Preeti Savla ji. I think under their leadership, Preeti madam has been ensuring that, some excellent deliverables are being organized in these webinars. Thanks, Jyoti, for setting this up. And I'm sure Garima would, talk and take you through. She's a young individual. We happened to cross paths at a small little webinar, and, I was really amazed by the kind of knowledge that people are actually wondering, and they're working in that space. So to all the chartered accountants in this space here, let me tell all of you that, this isn't just a buzzword. This isn't just a myth. The corporate sustainability, the growth are actually, they go hand in hand together today. And more importantly, when it comes to doing a certification on whether you are complying with ESG, whether you are complying with BRSR, whether you are complying with any of these so-called accepted norms, people next, profits last. It is you and me as a chartered accountant who are in the best position to certify that. And it is not, again, a big MNC rule. Because if suppose there is a big company which has to have this clearance that I need this certification, of course, they might go to a big MNC, but they would definitely ask that if you have a broker, if you have a retailer, if you have a value chain at a smaller levels, we need certifications for them. And who's going to certify them? Of course, no one could afford those MNCs again there. But the most important part is, until as you know it, you will never be eligible for that kind of an assignment. Now, this is what I'm talking about, being aware about so many of the things that are happening under sustainability. More importantly, again, funding is hugely leveraged through sustainability. Every small little step that these companies are doing, it is making sure that there is a huge leverage on their borrowing cost. And who better than you and me as chartered accountant to understand this? So before I wind up my submission to all of you, I would give you one small quick case study. If you know anyone who is into recycling of materials, I would request you go and spend some time with them. Today in India, since the cost of land, the cost of space is so high that people are actually paying to get rid of used and old scrap items. And importantly, if that item can generate power or oil or a fuel, think you are in absolutely a bang on multi-billion dollar business. As chartered accountants, what I want to give you is a highlight of, you may go back, this will be a food for thought, you may study this proposition, but let me tell you, very soon you'll find small little pockets of these kind of businesses coming up And if you can be an entrepreneur in that, or if you can help an entrepreneur come in that, I think that is what will differentiate for you from a value added chartered accountant to only a compliance oriented chartered accountant. Imagine for a business like you, raw material, you don't have to purchase. You get money to take away the raw material, and then you process it, and then you deal in two things. One, of course, the fuel, the final product, and the second and the most interesting aspect called carbon credits. Now that's gonna be a commodity which will be traded and which will go for a long, long time. And there'll be a lot of valuation games involved in that as well. Who better than you and me as chartered accountants to understand and dwell in this super evolution and revolution? With these words, I'm sure Garima will take you through some different and some wonderful nuances about this entire game of sustainability. But yes, as I said, it's not just a myth. The growth is imminent. More importantly, our role as chartered accountants in this space is becoming amazing. So stay tuned, and I'm sure you'll have a great learning session today. Should you need any further assistance, should you need any guidance, should you need to reach out to any of us, feel free. Of course, the social media, the Lyft handles are all working for all of you. Lyft means LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. All of us are there. And more importantly, do touch, connect, and see how can we all grow together. Any ideas, let me know. More than happy to be in touch with all of you. And I'm sure this committee is committed to ensure the all-round development of all its members. Thank you once again for setting this up. Jyoti, well done. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. Jasbir ma'am will take the session forward with Garima ma'am.
Yes, Jyoti, I'll introduce CA Garima Batra. CA Garima Batra is the founder and CEO of Bismode Global Private Limited, a tech-enabled business consulting firm. A chartered accountant, certified fraud examiner, and company secretary, she brings over 7 years of expertise in enterprise risk management, risk-based internal audits, fraud risk assessment and investigations, internal controls, and business process optimization. With experience at Deloitte and across sectors such as iron and steel, IT, FMCG, and fashion, she has led major business transformation initiatives focused on enhancing productivity, profit, and positioning. Garima has designed and implemented end-to-end risk management solutions that strengthen internal control frameworks, improve operational efficiency, and deliver significant cost savings. A sought-after speaker and corporate trainer, she has conducted impactful sessions on risk management, internal audits, fraud prevention, and ESG for ICAI's Western Regional Council, management associations, global corporations, consulting firms, and academic institutions. Please welcome CA Garima Batra. Over to you, CA Garima. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. I'll quickly share my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, great. Like Arpit sir has already set up the tone for this session, like how relevant, how important sustainability is in current times. Today's topic would be relevant for chartered accountants, not only in practice, but also if one of you is from the industry, it would be equally insightful for you as well, as we would be diving into the practicalities of sustainability, of the practicalities of how ESG is getting embedded into the operations of the businesses, and how we as chartered accountants, as professionals, can help the organization into the ESG and sustainability goals. A quick overview of the coverage of this session. We would initially set up the context of what sustainability is, why it is relevant, what companies are doing in the ESG domain. We would understand the ESG governance not from the theoretical standpoint of view, but what aspects are covered in the environmental criteria, of the social criteria, of the governance criteria, and what companies are doing in these relevant domains. We would have a quick overview of, is ESG just a mere reporting or a compliance that we just have to fulfill the BRSR requirements and all, or does it really add value to the business? Next would be another important segment, that is ESG or sustainability just an expense for us, or is it an opportunity, a growth opportunity for our business? Then we would see case studies of leading organizations of what they are doing in ESG, which is helping them in their operations and ultimately into their revenue and profitability. Then we will check on the ESG strategy and implementation roadmap for those organizations who want to start into ESG from scratch. Then what are the steps that they should follow? And then we would see a few sectors deep dive, that what companies are actually doing in those specific sectors. So without delay, I would quickly go on to the first segment of our session. Over on the screen, you can see a few statements of the companies. What these statements mean, like for LG states that increase share of green 3-star products to 80% by 2025. Or Walmart says that to be supplied 100% by renewable energy. Or Philips says improving the lives of 3 billion people per year by 2025. Recyclable materials for all their products and packaging. Now, what are these statements? Are they mere, sorry, I think there's some issue with the internet. Just give me a second. Yes. Okay. So when we look at these statements, what are these? Are they just some promising fancy taglines that these companies are using? Or are these statements actual goals of these organizations, and why they are targeting these statements? These all statements relate to sustainability, and why they are putting out such statements in public is that they are showing that their organization is responsible, is looking into ESG and sustainability factors as one of the core areas of their focus. So these are not just mere statements, but actual targets which these companies are achieving, which sets the tone of why sustainability is important for us. Now, before we jump on to the ESG in 2025, let's rewind a bit for a moment. So this is a case of back in 2010, when the Unilever's then CEO was Paul Polman. He did something unusual at that moment of time for the corporate world. Now, what he did, he launched the Sustainable Living Plan, which was thought to be a bold strategy, and many people thought that that was risky at that point of time. The goals that the CEO set was ambitious. What were those goals? The goals were to halve the environmental footprint from the existing at that point in time, improve health for 1 billion plus people, and 100% sustainable sourcing by 2020. So these goals were uh, uh, thought to be very risky for those people, and this is the conversation from 2010, when sustainability and ESG were not even a buzzword at that point of time. The focus areas were sustainable palm oil, reduced waste, renewable energy use. Now, Unilever didn't stop just at the sustainable living plans or just at these goals. They also redefined how the brands under the Unilever were positioned. Let's see how. So instead of on the left hand side, you can see that Unilever categorized based on the purpose. So how they did that? So let's take an example of Dove. The sustainable living brands that Unilever classified. Few examples I've taken here. First one is of Dove. So instead of just saying that Dove is selling soaps or some, you can say, some products they are selling ice cream or tea or something like that, they gave each of their brands a clear purpose that these brands are connected with the society. Now, Dove wasn't just marketed as a soap company or a personal care company. It became a champion of real beauty, which they had run a campaign of self-esteem or real beauty mission, specifically for women and for young girls at that point of time. Ben and Jerry's, they went beyond ice cream and they actively marketed as social justice activism or environmental, supporting the environmental causes. Hellman's, again, they made their brand as food waste reduction as their one of the core campaigns, which encouraged the consumers to rethink how they use the food. Now, when we talk about Knorr, they connected to the farmers and their families by focusing on sustainable agriculture, by focusing on nutritional education. Lipton committed to sustainable tea sourcing, and they partnered with Rainforest Alliances to make everyday products more and more ethical. So the brands traditionally who focused only on their primary functional benefits, such as for soaps or for their tea or for their ice cream, but this brand gave a sustainable message to the society, which attracted their consumers, which attracted their stakeholders, and all this had taken place back in 2010. So you can imagine to the extent thoughts were put in for the sustainable initiatives. What were the performance results because of these kind of campaigns? So if you compare the growth rate, sustainable living brands of Unilever grew 69% faster than the other brands under Unilever, which clearly shows that the consumers, the stakeholders, they are attached to the cause of the brand. If we talk about the revenue contribution, 75% of Unilever's total company growth came only from these purpose-driven brands, which were the sustainable living brands. If we talk about the market share gains, many sustainable living brands, they gained market share even in spite of having competitive pricing or in spite of increased competitive pressure because of the purpose they attached to their brand at that point of time. Now, what was the environmental, social, and business impact? We have seen the performance impact. What was the impact on the ESG factors? So Unilever, they reduced water usage in manufacturing by 44%, and they have cut the CO2 emissions by 65% per ton of production by 2020. So this is also a huge target which they had accomplished, which also exceeded some of the threshold regulatory requirements as well. Talking about the social aspects, they partnered with NGOs to improve the livelihoods of the communities around. They got involved in the sustainable palm oil sourcing, which also impacted 1.5 million farmers, and that's a huge count. Talking about the governance aspect, they emphasized on transparent reporting and stakeholder engagement, which ultimately helped them gain trust of their stakeholders, build a brand loyalty. There's nobody who doesn't know about Dove, about Unilever, about their different brands under that product. Business results, talking about from the industry angle standpoint, revenue growth, Dove became Unilever's largest brand. Market leadership, it became #1 personal care brand globally in many categories. Premium maintenance, they sustained their premium pricing versus the other commodity soap brands. Higher repeat purchase rates and net promoter scores. So you can see whatever a business wants to achieve in terms of numbers, in terms of trust, in terms of the social, environmental governance goals, everything they have achieved because they were proactive into sustainability and they were proactive into their ESG goals and they worked towards it. This is one case. Now let's look at a very different case, which the case of Volkswagen. It shows what happens if ESG or if sustainability is ignored. So this is about 2015 when Volkswagen was caught in a massive scandal. Now, what was that scandal? It was revealed that they had installed a software to cheat the emission tests. So, what was the environmental impact? The software falsified the emission data. The cars were actually emitting up to 40 times of the legal limits of the nitrogen oxides, which was seriously harming the air quality at that point of time. Talking about the social impact, so this scandal definitely it would erode the public trust. The trust of millions of customers collapsed because of this kind of act, because the consumers, the stakeholders, they felt betrayed by the brand. Talking about the governance aspect, weak oversight and unethical leadership created a culture where short-term gains were prioritized over the compliance. So the ESG, all these three criteria failed for this brand. Now, what did this brand do to overcome these kind of issues? Volkswagen, they pivoted to invest 73 billion euros in electrical vehicles by 2025. This shows us that how non-compliance can force a strategic shift in their operations, which is focused towards the ESG factors. Now, they came into sustainability the hard way because of the wrong ads that they did in the past. So, what is the takeaway for us from these two case studies? ESG lapses are not just the compliance issues, is first. It shows us that ESG lapses are core business risks that can destroy even decades of brand value, the brand equity that is there in the market. And at the same time, strategic ESG action like Volkswagen EV pivot that they had done can become a foundation for a new growth story for the brand. So lesson for us is that let's make ESG and sustainability a proactive choice for our businesses rather than a forced reaction to any crisis like the one that Volkswagen had encountered. Coming on to the deep diving into each of the E, S, and G covenants. So most of us, I think all of us know what ESG means. Environmental factor covers the climate change, biodiversity, water, energy, carbon, everything related to the environment. Social factors, they cover everything related to equal opportunity, human rights, health and safety, their customers, child labor, everything around the society comes under the social factor. Governance is more of the tone at the top. How ethical the business is, how is the leadership, how is the board independence, the shareholders democracy, how is the compliance. So everything around the tone at the top comes under the governance factors. Now let's deep dive into each of these. So how do we focus into the environmental integration? So environmental is more of the operational focus areas. To simplify, I have bifurcated into 4 factors. Energy is that how we are adopting to the renewable energy sources, efficiency programs, internal carbon pricing. When we talk about water, so what are the water conservation systems in the organization? How is the recycling infrastructure? What is the watershed management that the organization is doing? When we talk about waste, so circular economy models, zero waste to landfill operations, these are the few strategies that are there under the waste management. When we talk about climate, so how is the scope 1, 2, 3 accounting done, the emissions accounting done? How are the science-based targets achieved? What is the TCFD alignment that is there in the organization? These are the few strategies under each of these 4 segments. Now, let's see the examples of what Indian leadership companies under the leadership are doing in India. Talking about ITC. So ITC is triple positive. When I mean triple positive, it means water positive, carbon positive, and waste recycling positive. So they have sustained it for 20 plus years. When we talk about Tata Steel, They are responsible steel certified. 95% water recycling is done at the Jamshedpur plant. We have a detailed case study of Tata Steel in the coming slides. We'll deep dive into that as well. When we talk about Hindustan Zinc, again, they are having 100% renewable energy by 2030 commitment. So these organizations are setting the targets and they are actually achieving it. How? By integrating these targets into their core operations. Again, when we talk about the environment, Panchamrits is a very relevant segment for India specifically. Panchamrits is India's contribution to the climate action, which our Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken about in the COP26. So what are these kind of targets for the environmental segment? So we are working towards energy saving, for water saving, reduction of single-use plastics, sustainable food systems, waste reduction, healthy lifestyle for people. So what are the few targets that India has set? So India will reduce the total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons till 2030, and 2030 is not far away for us. By 2030, India will reduce the carbon intensity of its economy by more than 45%. By the year 2070, India will achieve the target of net zero. See, this is so huge commitment. India will meet 50% of its energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. Again, a great initiative. India will take its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030. So all these goals, the targets, which are called the Panchamrits, specifically targeting on the environmental segment. How will this be achieved for India? Right when the organizations are setting their micro targets in their organization and contributing towards these kind of goals. When we talk about social integration, it is more of people-centric elements. Now it includes workplace, which would be health and safety protocols, mental wellness programs, compensation related activities in the organization, inclusion, the diversity, equity, and inclusion that we say, the DEI metrics in performance scorecards, how is that included? Equitable progression pathways that are there in the organization, what the company is doing for reskilling the employees, what are the apprenticeship programs that are run in the company, how is the leadership pipelines there in the company, how is the supply chain managed, so human rights due diligence, ethical sourcing again comes under this part, community, so what are the shared value initiatives, what is the company doing for the community, how is the local employment around the business, to what extent the stakeholders are engaged. Again, few examples here of leading Indian companies. When we talk about HUL, 1.5 lakh plus women rural entrepreneurs, they are embedded into the distribution model. This is a great initiative to include rural people, especially women, as entrepreneurs into their core business operations. Infosys Foundation, they annually invest around rupees 400 plus crores annually, and 35,000 plus employee volunteers are there for the social causes. Marico, they also have a Saffola Fit Foodie initiative that drives both the health impact and also the brand loyalty for the company. When we talk about the governance aspect, it is more about embedding governance into the operations. Now, how this would be done? When we talk about accountability, ESG commitments at board level, again, this is a crucial aspect to maintain the tone at the top, whether the company is actually appointing a specific authority who is responsible for the sustainability initiative, having the CSO in the organization. From the controls aspect, ESG data, is it integrated into the ICFR that we do, the IFC, ICFR testing that we do as CAs? Is ESG data also integrated? Are the controls also assessed from that standpoint of view? Transparency, so how well they are seeking third-party assurance, how well they are adhered to the sustainability standards, be it GRI, SASB, BRSR, TCFD, there are many. How is the incentive mechanism? So are they also linking the ESG linked initiatives in their compensation as a part of variable pay? That also plays a crucial role. When we talk about ethics, how strong is the whistleblower mechanism? How strong is the anti-retaliation policy, and is it actually working well in the organization? How is the supplier code of conduct? how ethical the company is operating. Everything around this comes under the governance segment. Example of Indian leaders here. When we talk about Wipro, 30% of the executive variable pay is already linked to the ESG goals. When we talk about Tata Power, ESG controls are tested through internal audit. Now, this is rare. As internal auditors, there are very few. I am not even sure that whether organizations have actually already started testing on the ESG controls as well, but Tata Power is already doing it. When we talk about Mahindra Finance, they have a structured grievance redressal mechanism with 95% plus resolution rates. Now, all these statistics that are there in front of us, it helps us gain trust on these brands because of the good that they are doing for the community around, for the stakeholders, for their consumers, for their employees, which is why these brands are also reputed. So sustainability and ESG is not a compliance. I think this would have been clear from the discussion that we had so far already. Now, let's see, we are discussing that stakeholders are satisfied. Let's have a quick overview of what the stakeholders are expecting under sustainability and how do they react to it. When we talk about investors, very important, they are increasingly committed to responsible investment. So any company who is gaining investments, even as part of private equity, the investors are assessing how good you are performing under the ESG factors, how sustainable is your business. Irrespective, the BRSR is not applicable to you, you are not top 1,000 listed companies, still the investor wants the organizations to be sustainable and resilient. The consumers, they are connected, they are aware, and now they are also demanding. So consumers are increasingly embracing the brands that align with the social values. Nowadays, with the increased use of social media by all age groups, consumers are more aware and they themselves promote brand by word of mouth who are doing good for the society. When we talk about the communities around, the community's activism, the negative public perception, that would have a direct impact on the business. So the cost of non-compliance for the business could be huge. It would erode the brand value. So communities also play a crucial role for the sustainability initiatives that the company is doing. Employees are also prioritizing the purpose over salaries. So they are publicly calling out, like I said, with the extensive use of social media, any irresponsible behavior, and that would be out in social media in seconds. So recent example of Diwali, you might have seen this year during Diwali, the reels went viral on Instagram, on Facebook, that what gifts the employees are getting from their organization as Diwali. So these small efforts also count for these employees, and they are active on social media by word of mouth to speak about the company, be it good, be it bad. So that is also you have to be aware. Regulators are also setting high ESG standards, though it is not there for all the companies now. BRSR is also having limited applicability, but the regulators are still setting higher standards on the ESG ground. So they are also looking at sustainable businesses. So is ESG just about compliance? Though we have already had a hint that it might be not just about compliance, let's have a deep dive into this as well. So if we talk back in time, what was the traditional view of a good organization who is doing good for the society? Meeting the CSR requirements, getting the environmental clearances, or fulfilling the labor compliances, then I think our organization is good to go. But the newer reality is that ESG leaders in India are creating significant competitive advantage, irrespective they are compliant, irrespective they are fulfilling all the environmental laws, labor law requirements, irrespective they are fulfilling their CSR requirements. Still, the organizations that are doing differently for the environment, for the society, they are gaining competitive advantage. We have seen in the case of Unilever as well. What is the market shift? Indian companies with strong ESG are attracting global capital. So the investors, not only in India, but also foreign investors, are giving premium valuations to the companies who are having strong ESG base, who are having good sustainability initiatives in their organization. So when we talk just about compliance, what compliance means in India in the current state. So if we look at the environmental compliances, we need the pollution control board clearances, be it regarding the air quality, water, waste management permits and everything. Environmental impact assessments are also there. So it is mandatory for the projects which are valued more than 50 crores. So this is also there now under the environment protection initiatives. Carbon reporting is voluntarily required, but SEBI is now increasingly pressurizing the organizations to report their carbon usages and everything. Plastic waste management rules, it is an extended producer responsibility now. So the compliances, the laws are also coming up more and more towards being environment friendly, and many of them are also mandatory. When we talk about the social compliances, CSR, we all know what CSR compliance is under the Companies Act. Labor laws, what is the change? 44 plus labor laws are consolidated into 4 comprehensive labor codes. So a change is there into the social factors as well. Workplace compliance, we all know about it. Right to information, there's an increased emphasis on the transparency. When talking about the governance compliances. So SEBI is having stringent regulations regarding the board composition, the independent directors, women directors, audit committee, risk management committee. Companies Act are also specifying on the director duties. They have to certify on the controls, on the sustainability parameters. Disclosures are stringent. Under the IBC, corporate governance in the distress situation, that is also coming under the governance compliance aspects. So even the laws are focusing more and more towards the ESG factors. And of course, the companies who are getting into ESG voluntarily are getting significant competitive advantages. So it is not only restricted to the CSR and just fulfilling the legal and regulatory requirements. A very interesting case study here, that if we feel that our organization is compliant, are we protected if we are compliant? This is an example of a reactive approach of Vedanta Sterlite copper plant, which was closed in 2018. So what happened? On paper, the company was meeting all its pollution norms, but in reality, the community concerns about the ESG emissions, they kept on rising. So the protests, they increased, they escalated, and eventually the plant had to be closed. What was the result for that company? Over 8,000 crores rupees of investment was lost. Over 40,000 jobs were impacted because of this initiative. Because why this happened? Because they were compliant on paper, but actually in practice, they were not actually considerate about the emissions. The lesson here is simple for us, that compliance, it doesn't guarantee a social license for our organization to operate, because the communities around, they would protest and they would demand their rights. So if you don't actively look into the interest of the stakeholders of the communities around, the compliance certificates, they won't save you. And ultimately Vedanta's plant was closed in 2018. Now let's talk about the another compliance mindset problem, which is a cost center mentality. We feel that compliance is a cost center for us. So what are the companies doing or who are fulfilling their CSR requirements? So the typical approach is that we need to spend 2% as a part of mandatory CSR requirement. Let's find some NGOs and let's donate funds to them, and we would be on paper compliant. What is the opportunity that the companies are missing with this approach? Maybe they can divert those CSR funds to something more relevant to their business objective, which would also help them enhance their brand value, also contribute to their operations. So even the CSR contribution has to be strategically thought of. What is the result if we merely look for NGOs and just fulfill the compliance requirements on paper? The compliance would be achieved, but you're not creating any differentiating factor. You're not creating any competitive advantage for your business because of the typical traditional approach that you're following. So looking beyond compliance, what is the change in the strategic value of the stakeholders, of the businesses as well? talking about risk management. So if we are compliant, we would be avoiding fines. But what if we are proactively involved in the ESG initiatives? We would mitigate even broader risks. We have examples, but let's see how is the shift in the focus in the risk management perspective. So if you check the focus, traditional risk management it focused corely on the avoiding of penalties and fines and everything. But now if we talk about strategic risk management, we are more towards comprehensive business risk mitigation, not only from the compliance standpoint. When we see the scope of risk management, it was merely for regulatory compliance as per traditional view. But now we are also looking at the operational risk, reputational risk, strategic risk, the systemic risk, everything around our business regarding every action the company is taking. What was the timeline thought for the risk management? Traditionally, short term and reactive approach that we have already seen in many examples before. But now, strategic risk management is more of a long term vision and more of proactive initiatives to be a differentiating company for the stakeholders. Case study, a classic case study of Tata Steel. It's a case study of the Jamshedpur plant. Like I said, we would discuss it in the coming slide. What was the challenge? Jamshedpur was a water-stressed region. What was the risk for the business there? Water scarcity, it threatened the operations and also the community relations. What would be the traditional response to be able to meet at least the minimum water usage norms? What was the strategic ESG response that Tata Steel did? They invested more than rupees 500 crores in water recycling and rainwater harvesting in that region. They brought in innovation. 98% was the water recycling rate, which was highest globally. They partnered with the community around. So watershed development was made in the surrounding areas. So they benefited the community. They benefited their core operations as well by innovation, by bringing in ESG initiatives. What was the business impact of all these strategic responses? They secured water supply for decades now. So there was no water stress for running their operations. Community relationships got strengthened because they worked for the community as well. Now, you might be thinking that rupees 500 crores is a huge amount for investment. They are also getting cost savings because of these initiatives. So yes, there was an upfront cost, but now ultimately they're also saving up to 100 crores of amount annually and zero water related operational disruptions. So they have mitigated their core operational risk itself by bringing in innovation, by bringing in some investment and thinking strategically, also considering the community around. Risk mitigated, operational risk got mitigated, regulatory risk got mitigated because they exceeded their compliance requirements. Reputational risk, of course, they developed a strong brand value for these initiatives, and community risk also got mitigated because they are now getting support from the local communities as well. So a classic example of strategic risk management is what Tata Steel did. When we talk about the stakeholder expectations, now stakeholders' expectations have also changed. We have already discussed. Let's see again quickly. How is the change in investor expectations? Earlier, investors were only looking into the financial performances, into the promoter's credibility, into their market position, the growth rate. Now, investors are also ESG aware. 70% plus FDI investors now, they consider ESG factors before investing in any of the organizations. The domestic institutions, they are also launching mutual funds. They are launching their ESG products. Retail investors are also growing awareness of the sustainable investing. So investors are also more inclined towards the ESG aware organizations. What is the change in customer expectations? Talking about the urban customers, more than 60% of these customers, they are willing to pay a premium price for sustainable products, for eco-friendly products, for organic products. And this has increased drastically in the past 5-6 years, specifically in the post-COVID era. There's more of awareness around the consumers as well, and they're ready to pay the price for good products. Digital natives ESG consciousness is driving the purchase decision. Brand loyalty, again ESG alignment, it creates a strong brand value amongst the customers. So customer expectations are again also inclined towards the sustainable initiatives. Another example here is of Godrej Consumer Products. How was their innovation under the sustainability initiatives? First example is of the product innovation. What was the innovation that they brought in? Plastic-free packaging. What was the problem that they addressed? They addressed the consumer concern, which was growing awareness about plastic, which is there from ages now. So everybody is aware that plastic is not good for the environment. Especially now the urban millennials, they are more focused towards the plastic concern. Regulatory pressure, again, government is also banning the single-use plastics. They are again, like we discussed, extended producer responsibility rules have come in. Cost issue, traditional packaging, it became expensive because of the environmental regulations. So these were the three core problems in the plastic packaging. What was the specific innovation that they brought into their product which solved these problems? The product was Goodnight paper-based mosquito repellent packaging. So the traditional was plastic coils in plastic packaging. Now it is paper-based and biodegradable packaging with minimal plastic. What is the impact in their operations? They have reduced the plastic usage per unit by 60%. Now this is a huge quantum. Consumer response, 25% premium pricing acceptance for eco-friendly variant. Like we discussed, consumers are also more aware. They are ready to pay the premium price for the eco-friendly products. Market result, they gained 3% points market share in the premium segment. So even the irrespective of having premium pricing, since they brought in innovation in their product, they address the environmental concern, they are getting the results as well. Next product innovation was using the natural ingredients. So here they shifted the rationale. They played with the rationale of the consumers. Now, Indian urban consumers, they are now more health conscious. Like we discussed, post-COVID era, there's more awareness on health consciousness. So 68% of the Indian urban consumers, they prefer products with natural ingredients. There's a growing trend for Ayurveda, traditional products, and safety concerns are also there, that there's increased awareness about how harmful the chemical ingredients are, especially for the products that are related to the children. What specific innovation they brought in their product? They have brought in Godrej Professional Natural Hair Color. What was the innovation in their product? The product was PPD free formulation, ammonia free with natural color extracts. What was the differentiating factor that they used? Salon quality results without chemicals. This is the tagline that they used. This was the differentiating factor that they had for their hair color products. Business impact, they developed salon partnerships. 2000 plus premium salons, they adopted this range of the product. Price realization, 60% premium over the regular hair colors, but still they witness 40% higher repeat purchase rate from their customers. The customers are more loyal because they are getting good products, eco-friendly products. And this happened because they were bringing innovation around the ESG factors. They were considering the society, they were considering the environment, and they brought in innovation in their product. They changed their brand positioning to good and green sustainability promise. So before, the brand promise was around the functional benefits, that this product kills the insects, this product cleans effectively. But now how they are marketing their product, with their functional benefits, with their environmental benefit, with their health benefit. So they are integrating their ESG factors in their marketing as well. What is the tagline integration that they did? Good for you, good for the planet. A short sentence, but with a strong message for the society. Let's see the financials here. What is the impact on the business results? Revenue impact, 2,400 crores revenue, that is 20% of the total revenue by 2023. So sustainable product revenue contributed 20% to their total revenue. Growth rate, sustainable products growing at 35% CAGR versus mere 8% for the traditional products. So that this is again a huge leap. They gained market share by 5 percentage points in the key categories of their sustainable variant products. When we talk about the profitability, the sustainable products were delivering 5 to 7% higher margins as well. Despite the premium pricing, the volume, the rate of growth, the volume of sales was also increasing by 25% annually. And customer acquisition cost 30% lower for sustainable products because of word of mouth. Because the consumers are aware, because the customers are aware, the products are automatically getting the visibility because of the word of mouth and because of social media, of course. So again, which reduce the customer acquisition cost for this company. So a small initiative around sustainability can bring this drastic change for the companies. We have seen so many examples so far now. So ESG as a value driver, what is the opportunity for the Indian businesses? Definitely, it contributes to the revenue enhancement because of the premium positioning you get in the market, being a sustainable and organization that is doing good for the society. Market access, again, ESG compliance is opening global markets for us because of the sustainability initiatives that the company is taking. New revenue streams via circular economy, clean technology opportunities that are there. So revenue enhancement is definitely there for the companies by some way or the other. Cost optimization, but naturally, if the company is focusing on the energy efficiency mechanisms, waste reduction, water waste management, material cost reduction, again, they would be ultimately saving costs because of the resource efficiency. They would, if the organization is into converting waste into revenue streams, they would again generate some kind of revenue from that. Like we already discussed initially that the companies who are recycling, they are monetizing from that. Process optimization, ESG focus on the operational improvements as well. So all these ESG factors, if you're looking for improvising there, ultimately you are improvising your operations also, you're improvising your processes, and ultimately the non-value adding activities would be removed, and in some way or the other, you would optimize the cost of the operation. Capital benefits, lower cost of capital, like we discussed, investors are inclined towards sustainable organizations. So you are getting better borrowing rates. Access to green finance, we have sustainability linked loans, green bonds, higher valuation. So ESG premium is, you're getting premium in the public market valuations for the sustainability and ESG initiatives. Again, you would ultimately have a greater market share. You will have a good brand value among the stakeholders. Cost leadership would be there. Operational excellence would be there. You will have revenue growth. You will have a long-term resilience for your organization. So the opportunities under the ESG initiatives are ample. They are tremendous. Now, how do we actually move beyond compliance under ESG? So I have simplified into a 4-question test. First is around the value creation. How does our ESG strategy create measurable business value? So even if we think of incorporating ESG initiatives in our operations, does the ESG strategy create measurable business value for us? So how is the strategy creating value is the first question that you should ask. Second is differentiation. What makes our ESG approach unique in our industry? Classic example of Godrej. How they have used differentiation in their ESG approach, which helped them gain the market share. Third question would be around integration. How is ESG embedded in our core business processes? And fourth is future proofing. How does ESG position us for our future market changes? 4 simple questions that you need to check every time you think of incorporating ESG in your strategy and getting results. A very interesting segment here, talking about the ESG economics. We have seen any kind of ESG initiatives we are implementing, it comes with a cost. There is a huge investment that is required. So ESG, is it an expense or an opportunity for us? So talking about from the cost perspective, yes, of course, they need high upfront costs. There is high investment in green technology, be it solar panels. There are high operational costs as well, because compliance and ESG reporting, it adds to 5 to 10% approximately on an average to the budgets as well. So yes, from the cost perspective, there are these two kinds of costs, talking broadly. But when we speak of the opportunity perspective, definitely if you are incorporating these kind of initiatives, then you would have cost savings ultimately. So energy efficient systems, if you are incorporating, it would cut the utility cost by 20 to 30%. And this is there from the report of 2024, which has given this kind of percentage there in the report. Revenue growth, ESG attracts investors, it attracts customers. India's sustainability market is to hit rupees 66,000 crore by 2026 is from the CII report that is there. Brand value, definitely ESG boosts the brand loyalty. Talk about the Tata Group, they have witnessed 15 to 20% higher brand value for their products. So there is ample opportunity in this segment. Talking about balancing the equation, renewable energy investments, they do recover cost in on an average 3 to 5 years with a 10 to 15% ROI is from the EY India 2025 report, which states this kind of equation. And again, there is a lot of government support that is there for us through the PLI schemes, through the tax benefits that is there through the tax benefits for the ESG initiatives that is there. So to sum up, we can say that ESG definitely involves upfront costs, higher initial investments, but if you talk about the long term, it gives you long-term savings as well. It gives you a higher growth rate. It gives you higher revenue as well. So key takeaway for us is that yes, there would be upfront cost, but it would give us much higher benefit than the cost in the long term. Moving to the interesting segment, how leading companies are embedding ESG in their operations. Classic examples of famous organizations and how they are doing the sustainability, embedding sustainability into their day-to-day activities. First is an example of Faber-Castell. So they are into pencil manufacturing. So they are sourcing it from, they are sourcing the wood from the forest. Now, how they are managing it? They are sustainably managing their forest. They're using renewable natural resources for its eco-friendly variant of pencils. They are reducing deforestation and they are reducing the chemical use. So a traditional product is made sustainable through smart way of sourcing. So this is how they are. The wood sourcing was their core operations. Now they have embedded sustainability into that. They have considered using the natural resources. They have considered managing the forests, and this is how they are giving good to the society and also integrating it into their operations to improvise their revenue as well. Talking about the Aditya Birla or the Pantaloons Group, they have shifted to recyclable cartons and sustainable packaging, eliminating the single-use plastics for their organization. What message they give to the society? That they are responsible, they are responsible towards the environment, they are responsible towards the society, and it is visibly evident to the customers that they are using eco-friendly choices. Talking about ITC, they are operating under the triple positive framework, like we already discussed: carbon positive, water positive, and solid waste recycling positive. So they are generating renewable energy. They are recycling more waste than the waste they are producing. Sustainability into every operations, every day-to-day operations, and that is how they are working towards ESG as a part of their core business. Now, you might feel that since the starting of this session, I have taken examples of big companies, of large corporates. you might feel that they might have funds to do it. They are big enough to get into these kind of initiatives now. So very specifically, I have put up few examples of small startups here as well who are innovative and they are becoming the sustainability pioneers. First example is from Mumbai, which is a brand called Beko, who is working in the eco-friendly home essentials. So they are increasingly providing the bamboo brushes, compostable garbage bags, and recyclable paper tissues. So they are helping save the environment, reduce the plastic usages, and also they are providing these kind of products under the affordable ranges and also with good quality. A classic example of how you can bring eco-friendly products and into the core business operations. Second example is of Pool, which is a classic example of waste transformation. This is a brand from UP, which is transforming the temple waste. So they are converting the discarded temple flowers into incense sticks. See how innovative this is. They are also vegan leather, which they call it as the pleather, because it is developed from the flower waste from the temples. So this is a classic example of a circular economy model where they are addressing the issue of waste flowers, religious waste that is getting generated, and they are bringing in new products from it, and they are creating revenue streams for their business. Third one is again a classic example of innovation, Chakra Innovation. This is from Delhi NCR. They are capturing the diesel generator emissions and they are transforming it into ink. So high quality ink and paints they are manufacturing from this emissions. So this is the technology that they are bringing in, the innovation that they are bringing in, which is turning the air pollution into profitable products, working toward the environment, giving products to the society, and also sustainable brands. So even startups are working into sustainability through their product innovation. What are the lessons that the leadership gets from all the discussion that we had so far? Of course, it is proved that sustainability is not just about compliance. It is a strategic advantage for our business, which would definitely add value to our business. First takeaway for us is that small shift, it delivers a transformational impact for the business. Talk about the mosquito repellent technology, the reduced plastic usage, or talk about the natural hair color use. Incremental change, a small innovation into the product, a small change into the product, it can contribute substantially towards the environment and it can give you good financial returns as well. Sustainability enhances stakeholder visibility. Of course, then word of mouth works if you're doing good. The consumers, the stakeholders would themselves speak about you. Embed ESG across your entire value chain. So you can do it on your products, on your processes through energy efficiency, water conservation, waste reduction, process optimizations, to supply chain through responsible sourcing, vendor partnerships. Well, like we discussed that one of the brands, they employed women from the rural sector as entrepreneurs into their business. So you can work across the supply chain as well. So ESG is not only relevant to the manufacturing or maybe only for the employees or only for the consumers. You can embed it across your value chain, across your operations. Three very critical lessons for us as professionals, as business leaders, that this is how a small shift towards sustainability can impact our business. Now, what if we have to implement ESG in our organization from scratch? How do we actually do it? What is the implementation roadmap for us? First and the basic step is to assess your ESG readiness. So you check your current policies, your current business risks, your current benchmarks. Check your ESG readiness, whether you are ready to implement some or the other measures. Of course, you don't have to do everything at once. Start small, start with fewer initiatives. So first step is assessment, that where we are actually standing, what are the risks that we foresee, and what is something that we can actually do. And also identify what you're actually doing. So many a times companies are not recognizing that this is something that they're doing which is already benefiting somewhere on the or the other under the ESG criteria. So identify those aspects as well. Second is to prioritize. How do you prioritize? So suppose once you have assessed and you have brought in that these are the 10 things that I can do in my business around the ESG segments. Now you prioritize that which are the most relevant, which is what we call the materiality mapping, that these are the specific top 2-3 issues that are most relevant and the need of the hour, and this is something that I would resolve first. So that would balance the business impact also with the stakeholder expectations. You're going step by step, so it won't be overwhelming for you, and that is how you can start off small. Third is to strategize. Set clear, and very important factor is set a measurable ESG goal. The goals should be short term, medium, and long term. We have seen ample examples that companies are setting the goals and they are actually achieving it. So very important factor here is that you have to assess and you have to set measurable goals and make sure that these goals are aligned some way or the other to the global frameworks. So be it anything, maybe they are aligned with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals that are there, the SASB, GRI, or even BRSR for Indian companies. So make sure that whatever goals you're setting, it is somewhere or the other aligned to these kind of goals, to these kind of frameworks. The fourth step is to implement. So embed these into your core operations, make it your daily activity, be it in supply chain, be it in HR, be it in procurement, be it in production. And very important factor here in the implementation is that assign responsibility, assign ownership across function, that this is not merely for compliance, this has to be integrated into the operations and you are responsible to oversee it and to report on it and to work towards it. Fifth is to measure and report. So track your ESG KPI. So implementing itself is not sufficient. You'll have to measure that what actually is the benefit that we are getting and we are giving to the society by implementing the ESG measures. Set the KPIs and assess it via dashboards, via MISs, that this is the target that we had set. This is how the benefits that we are achieving. The review also has to be at the board level, at the CXO level periodically to see where we are heading, and make sure that you're reporting transparently to the investors, to the stakeholders, because you would gain trust and you would get a better brand value, brand positioning. So a lot of companies you can see are putting out their ESG reports, putting out their sustainability reports publicly, even if BRSR is not mandatorily applicable to them. Why they are doing that? One thing could be that yes, investor is demanding, but second is that company is doing it voluntarily to gain the stakeholders' trust and to develop a brand value. Sixth step and the last step is to improve and scale. So you refresh your priorities, you recheck, you revisit them every 2-3 years, see how your business is performing, see how your previous goals are performing, how close you are to your goals, and again build this as a culture in your organization. So ESG is new, so you have to take efforts to make sure that it is integrated in your organization, and that is a culture that is embedded into the operations, into the minds of your employees as well. And again, you have to scale initiatives from compliance to value creation. So value creation is something that has to be given emphasis in all your ESG initiatives. A small case study that I have taken here exactly relating to this. This is for one of the manufacturing companies. They went into sustainability, into the ESG, because their investor was demanding it, but they were lost as to ESG is a vast subject, it's comprehensive, it's never ending. So how do we start? How do we get into ESG and how do we actually implement? So there was no proper roadmap with them. They did not have any specific ESG efforts. Their reporting was also inconsistent. Of course, ESG rating plays a very critical role here. So depending, the investors are also getting, the companies getting ESG rated so that they are assessed on those parameters. So that also was impacted for that client. What we did for that client, we designed a comprehensive ESG strategy for them. How did we did that? First, and the basic step, materiality assessment, identifying the key ESG priorities for their particular industry and for their specific business. We set up governance framework with board level oversight, with proper KPIs, measurable targets. We gave them an implementation roadmap. This is how you will have to go step by step, covering energy efficiency, supply chain audits, workforce diversity. In fact, everything from the E, S, and G factors. And though BRSR or any kind of reporting was not applicable to them, we helped them implement a robust disclosure. Why? To gain stakeholders' trust. And those disclosures were aligned with the BRSR, GRI, and SSB guidelines. What was the impact that the client see? The client now has a clear vision, a clear practical blueprint related to ESG, which strengthens the accountability for the business. It builds stakeholder confidence. You are speaking out what we are doing into the ESG. So it builds the stakeholders' confidence, and it gives them a positioning for long-term business resilience. So since it was related to what we were discussing in the roadmap, I thought I would cover it here briefly. So this is how us as chartered accountants can help businesses into the ESG strategy and implementation. This is like we said, that we have to build a culture around ESG in our organization. Now, how do we do it? So you'll have to explain the stakeholders, the authorities, that how ESG would help you specifically in your operations. So if you're talking about the CFOs, how would CFO benefit from the ESG adoption? There would be incremental cost saving, ease in access to capital. It would help them strengthen the investor relationships, improve the regulatory compliance. So everything that CSO is looking into, it would benefit him in some or the other way by adopting the ESG. How would the CTO benefit? There would be strengthened data security. It would promote data-backed decision, because everything has to be reported. So you will have a proper data to take any kind of decision. And again, resource optimization would be definitely there, since you would be working on the environmental factors as well. This would also play a role. So CTO would also benefit. How would the COO benefit? Directly, it would boost the operational efficiency, reduction in emissions, supply chain management, regulatory compliances as well from the pollution control board and everything. So COO would also see a benefit into the operations by adopting the ESG. What would the CEO benefit from ESG? It would elevate the strategic alignment. It would improve the stakeholders' engagement, gain competitive advantage, reputational enhancement. So overall, business would elevate. So CEO would also benefit. So this is how you will have to build a culture of ESG in your organization, and that is how it would get embedded in your operations. Now, what are the common challenges that we see if we are going towards ESG integration? First, and very common, data collection, data quality is a major challenge, because right now maybe the data is scattered across locations, or maybe there is manual tracking of emissions and the efficiency or the utilization. The manual tracking leads to errors, delays, maybe insufficient data. Might be possible that the records are itself not there in the organization. So data collection and quality is the first challenge that you will have to cater to for integrating the ESG into the operations. Second is organizational silos. Like I said, that there has to be an authority who is there to look into the sustainability initiatives, CSOs or the sustainability teams, and they have to work in tandem with the operations, with the finance team, so that they are on the same page. Another challenge is that there is a disconnect between the target setting and execution. So like I said, the goals have to be measurable and practically should be able to implement. So there's a disconnect between target setting and execution. Framework overload is another challenge. So a lot of organizations are now confused that there are so many standards, which is the one that is applicable to me and which is the one I should follow. So every standard is serving a different cause. So you'll have to check that what is most relevant to your business and which is the one that is applicable to you. BRSR is of course there for India, but again, you'll have to keep a check that what else is needed as per your initiative, as per the goal that is there. Again, another challenge is that different stakeholders demand. Investors might want SASV, but the regulation wants BRSR. So again, like I said, depending on your goal, depending on the basic initiative, you'll have to decide that what is the framework that is applicable to me, what is the logic behind each of these frameworks. Short-term versus long-term tension, like we already discussed that there are high upfront costs and the payback period is 3 to 5 years on an average, might even take longer depending on how your business is operating. So that is another challenge that companies do face. Another challenge is the difficulty in quantifying the return on investment of the social initiatives, of the qualitative factors. How do we measure the return? That is another challenge. Greenwashing risk is there, that are we overstating the commitments and we are not having credible action plans. It is relating to what we discussed before, that we need to have a clear blueprint, clear roadmap of how we would go into implementation of our targets. So greenwashing risk is always there, that are we overstating the commitments. Lack of third-party verification also at times erodes the stakeholders' trust. So that is another challenge that comes in as a part of ESG integration. So these are the top 5 challenges that most of the companies encounter when coming into the ESG integration into operations. Now let's see how technology can help us into the ESG integration and also cater to many of the challenges that we discussed before. First, and the basic challenge was the lack of data or lack of quality data. We can use the IoTs and sensors for real-time monitoring, real-time tracking. So smart meter tracking can be used for energy consumption tracking by machine, shift, or by product line. Water flow sensors can detect the leakages, can optimize the water usage for your organization. Emission monitors can provide continuous air quality data to you. A classic example for the IoTs and sensors used for real-time data monitoring is of Tata Steel. What they are doing is they are using IoT for real-time energy monitoring and optimizing across their furnaces. So these are actually being used by the organizations, and this is how you can cater to the challenges that we have discussed before. How you can use AI and machine learning, which is the predictive intelligence for the ESG initiatives. Predictive maintenance, reducing the energy waste, reducing the downtime. AI-powered ESG risk assessment of suppliers of their local geographies. Anomaly detection, again, by flagging any unusual consumption patterns that are there. AI and machine learning can do that. Classic example of it is that Infosys, they are using AI to forecast their carbon footprint based on their project mix. So this is how Infosys is using the AI and machine learning. Blockchain can be used, how immutable supply chain records from raw material to finished products, verification of the sustainability claims for say ethical sourcing, for fair trade, transparent carbon credit tracking. So Mahindra is piloting blockchain for farm to fork traceability. So this is how technology can solve your basic issues and can give you a huge leap into the ESG integration. How can cloud platforms and dashboards, that is the centralized ESG management, help you? It would be a single source of consolidating data from all locations, which was one of the challenges that we discussed earlier, that the data is scattered. Real-time executive dashboards for scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions for the diversity metrics. So you have real-time dashboards which would help you give statistics on the ESG front. Automated compliance tracking against these multiple frameworks. So you have these kind of service providers, tool providers as well, who help you in this. HUL's cloud-based ESG platform is aggregating data from 50 plus factories. So this is already implemented in these organizations. How can RPA help you in ESG? They can help you enhance efficiency in reporting. How? Automation in data extraction, auto population of ESG reports. It would help them reduce manual efforts, reduce errors. Wipro is already using RPA to cut their ESG reporting time, and they have reduced that time by 60%. Satellite and geospatial tech, that is beyond the facility walls. So monitoring deforestation in supply chain regions, tracking water stress in operational areas, verification of the renewable energy claims that are that they're using. ITC already uses the satellite imaginary to monitor the watershed development impact for their business. So these are the technologies that you can use, and these companies are already giving you an example of how they are using it into their ESG integration, and how these kind of technologies would help you to fight against these kind of challenges. A quick deep dive into the ESG priorities. I've taken example here of the insurance sectors. Let's see what different companies are doing and leading by example under the insurance segment. Paperless policies and digital claims is already implemented by many companies like ICICI Lombard, SBI Life, HDFC Life, and many more. Green offices, digital operations are already there to reduce the paper uses, enhance the efficiency, enhance the process, improvise the process cycle time as well. Customer and community focus, which is focusing on the S, the social of the ESG. So many companies like LIC, SBI Life, they are running large-scale financial literacy campaigns in the rural areas, in the semi-urban areas. They are also companies like Star Health. They are creating health insurance products which are easily accessible. They are ensuring that social good is linked with the business expansion. They have linked it to their core product. Green finance and investments, HDFC Life, ICICI Prudential Life, they are actively channeling investments into green bonds and renewable energy products. This shows that how insurers are strategically aligning their portfolios with the environment climate friendly initiatives. The GIC, General Insurance Company, they are using the climate risk assessments for their underwriting processes, particularly for the regions that are prone to the catastrophes. So they are considering the climate risk into their core business decision, which is relating to the ESG as well now. Again, an example of startup. These were examples of big companies. Now what startups are actually doing. This is a classic case study of Go Digital. What is Go Digital? It is a new age insurance startup. What they are doing, they are operating 100% on digital model, 100% paperless, app based. They have improved operational efficiency. They have good customer trust. They have an employee centric culture. They have a strong focus on flexible working hours for their employees, and it is attracting a lot of youth and young workforce management, which is how they are catering the S of the ESG. Accessible insurance products. They are offering bit-sized insurance, affordable insurance products. So this is the innovation that they have brought in their product, like travel, mobile, health add-ons. So this innovative product design makes sure that they are accessible to a larger market area, addressing to the diverse customer needs, catering to the environmental causes, the social causes, having a good governance causes. They are transparent and reporting. What is the key learning that we have? Go Digital, it demonstrates that ESG leadership does not require massive budget, which is one of the key challenges, again, that companies encounter while thinking of getting ESG embedded in their operations. Tech and innovation are the two simple things that these companies have used, not very capital intensive, but is getting greater customer trust, better efficiency, and embracing a modern work culture as well. Again, examples of engineering companies that we have here, Bharat Forge and Varroc Engineering, they are the lead in the EV segment specifically, and they are also supporting the India's 30% EV adoption goal by 2030. The Motherson and Varroc Engineering, they are also working towards the renewable energy and waste reduction. Supply chain ethics and community engagement is also taken care of by Bharat Forge through their rural skill development programs. They're linking supply chain to the ESG initiatives. Governance and risk management. So specifically for Varroc Engineering, they ensure that 100% staff participation is there in anti-bribery training, in their ethical training that is conducted in the organization, which is again very important because many a times organizations do not give importance to these kind of trainings. Employee well-being and diversity. So again, tech training is given to 5,000 plus employees by Varroc Engineering, which they also promote the gender diversity. They are promoting employee well-being. They are enhancing the employee skill sets. Motherson, they are focusing on the flexible work hours. They are having good safety protocols for their employees. So this is how small initiatives also contribute to the ESG, to the sustainability initiatives of the company. Again, similar examples of many more companies here, that how they are working in the EV, in the renewable energy segment, in the water recycling segment, employee training. For the employee training specifically, Mahindra has trained 10,000 plus workers on green technology, 25% of women in the leadership segment. So they are working towards skill sets, towards innovation, towards diversity. So a few examples kind of related, but this is how companies are actually taking initiatives around various ESG focus areas. Again, around the governance as well, Maruti is running Vision 2050 with transparent BRSR, rural literacy programs. Ashok Leyland is organizing CSR health camps. Mahindra, in its ESG report, they have stated that they are focusing on the biodiversity projects for 50,000 plus locals. So this is how they are building the community trust as well. A very important insight that we have here on the screen, the last point under the key trends, which is from the McKinsey. It states that ESG driven manufacturers outperform peers by 3 to 5% annually. See how tremendous the impact is of these small initiatives that the companies take. With this, I would conclude this session. Though ESG is not a one-time exercise, but it has to be integrated in your operations, but definitely it would give you good results. And as chartered accountants, as professionals, we understand business, we understand finances, we understand internal controls, processes, operations. So we can help the businesses into the strategy and the implementation part of ESG. Though it is not a one-time exercise, continuous efforts would help reap benefits for the organization. With this, the forum is open for any questions that are there.
Hello.
Bharti ma'am, you are on unmute. On mute, sorry.
Yeah. Hello. Now I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. What are ESG covenants and how do they differ from the traditional financial covenants?
So ESG governance, like we have already covered it in the slides. So anything that is relating to the environment, which can be integrated to your processes, like we discussed about energy efficiency or automation, resource efficiency. That is one. Social is one, that how good we are doing for the community, how good we are doing for our employees. Are we only focusing on the salary component? So traditionally thinking of the financial aspects, we would focus on the employee salary, we would focus on the business revenue. But talking about ESG, we would focus on these 2-3 criteria as well. Regarding the governance, we would not only see how good our department is doing in terms of numbers, but we would also see how is the work culture, how is the ethical environment, specifically talking about the whistleblowers as well. This also gains a huge importance, which is kind of integrated to finance, but not solely focused on the financial aspects.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question. How are lenders integrating ESG linked clauses into financial agreements?
Yeah, so one thing is that So any investor, before they invest in your business, earlier they used to see the revenue, the CAGR, the ARR, the financial aspects, the projections, 5-year projections, growth rate, and everything. Now they are also seeing what business you are doing, how you are doing, are you impacting the environment negatively, and if there's anything negative in these criteria, any lower ranking, that is impacting the ESG rating. So ESG rating is something, a scoring mechanism that is given to the companies based on those 10, 15, 60 criteria, depending on the organization. So based on those criteria, scoring is given, and the investors now consider all these factors. Based on the rating, the borrowing rates would vary. The investor is keen or not in investing in your business, that would also vary. So operations are playing a key role in getting investments now.
Okay. What are the challenges company face in meeting ESG covenant requirements?
Challenges, I think we have already discussed few basic challenges regarding the data, that we don't have the data. So how do we assess? So we have seen how we can get the data by using the technology. Cost is one thing that we feel that ESG is costly. Even if you're looking for compliance part, it is just a wasted cost. So that also we have seen that it is not costly. It is giving you financial benefits in the long term. It is giving you qualitative and quantitative both the benefits for your business. So I think this segment we have already covered much
Yeah.
detail. Yeah.
How can organization move from a compliance driven ESG mindset to a value creation mindset?
So culture is something that is very important. If the organization, if the top leadership doesn't know the benefits of ESG, whatever we have discussed in the past 1.5 hours, whatever benefits we have discussed, now we are sure that yes, ESG is something that is adding value. But for somebody who is not aware of all these things, they would definitely see it as a compliance thing. So first and most important thing is awareness for the leadership, and drilling down to the operational people as well, for the employees also. You will have to explain them what are the benefits of the ESG initiatives. Only then they would have that motivation to integrate that into their operations.
To what extent does over focusing on compliance dilutes the strategic purpose of ESG?
So over focusing on compliance might also lead to greenwashing. Means that you are claiming that you're doing these 5-10 things into the ESG parameters, but actually in substance you are not. So merely focusing on the compliance, you might end up greenwashing. You might end up just putting things on paper, but actually you're not implementing it. We have seen example of this, that the factory had to be shut down. Why? Because on paper they were compliant, but actually in substance they were not. The community did not support the business.
Yeah, Vedanta.
Yes.
Can ESG lead to competitive advantage even if regulations did not mandate it?
Definitely, which is why the companies are also putting up their reports. So it is publicly available. You can see it on the NSE or even on the company specific websites. Few companies, private companies, even though they are not listed, on their company websites, you can see the sustainability reports. Even if not the reports, you will see some or the other paragraph which would highlight their sustainability initiatives. Why they are doing that? Because it is giving them some advantage. They are putting themselves as a loyal brand. They are getting customer and stakeholders attention.
Okay. Do ESG investment generate measurable ROI? If yes, how?
Yes, ESG investments do generate measurable ROI. Again, it's a long-term thing, like we already discussed, that upfront cost would be high, but year on year you would see the benefits. So even from small initiatives of having some automations technology to measure your energy utilization or the emissions, you can assess those reports. You can take call on how you can improve. Once you implement the action plan from that report, definitely it would give you monetary results as well.
Okay. How should company assess the cost benefit of ESG initiatives?
Sorry, could you repeat?
So, how should company assess the cost benefit of ESG initiatives?
Cost benefit, I think it is similar to what I answered before, that initially, whatever investment you're doing in ESG, you will have something in mind that this is the problem that I am solving. And if I am bringing this innovation, this is the cost that would be saved. That would be the first strategic thinking that you would have. Once you implement it, how the market responds to it. If your product is good, definitely it goes by the word of mouth. And once you have that strategy implemented, you will get the results year on year, and in long term, it would give you tremendous benefits.
Okay. What are some examples where ESG implementation has directly improved financial performance?
We have seen many examples before with the financials, with the exact amount, that how small initiatives have drastically improvised their revenue.
Okay. Yeah. Volkswagen later invested $73 billion. Electric vehicles, was this is a genuine ESG shift or an reputational recovery strategy?
I think it was both. So definitely, since the brand value got eroded, they are providing good, their product is good, so definitely they'll have to do something to again regain the customer trust. That was one factor. Second, with the increased awareness, with the increased uh, shift of the consumers towards the sustainability segment, they are also catering to that requirement. So I think it's both.
Yes. Yeah, I think the question is over. Almost everything you have covered.
Okay, so
So I'll give the any questions more. Okay, I'll give the vote of thanks. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah.
Ma'am, is there any problem?
Yeah. One more question is remaining.
Okay.
Can I ask?
yes,
Garima,
ma'am, please. Yes, ma'am, please.
How are companies embedding ESG into organized culture so that it becomes how we work rather than what we report?
I missed the starting part.
How are companies embedding ESG into organizational culture so that it becomes how we work
Okay.
rather than what we report?
Got it, got it. So, first thing is the awareness. Like I said, many organizations see training just as compliance. So, what is the tendency amongst the employees? Once the HR forces that today is the due date for completion of this training, if it's a recorded lecture, they would forward it and they would try to complete it as soon as possible. Nobody's showing that interest to learn. So, first thing is that you will have to build awareness in your organization. that this is how this is what ESG is. This is something that is new for our organization, for the industry as well, how it can benefit our business. And again, you'll have to erode the curiosity among the employees, that what innovations you can bring in. Definitely, another brilliant step that we can take is that try to involve the employees in the ESG strategy. Take suggestions from them. Give them some rewards for any innovative suggestion that they bring in for your business. That would help you include, make your employees also feel included in the strategy. That would give them some kind of encouragement, and that is how it would also ultimately build a culture in the organization.
Okay, so I think you have answered very nicely to all our viewers who are
Thank you.
participating, and I would like to give the vote of thanks to you. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Sustainability Reporting Standards Board of ICI, I extend my sincere gratitude to each of you for joining us today for the enlightening webinar on how leading companies are embedding ESG in operations. Your participation has been instrumental in making today's session a success. A heartfelt thanks to our esteemed speaker, CA Garima Batra, for sharing her deep expertise and practical perspective on how leading companies are embedding ESG in operations, and sharing such valuable perspectives on how ESG is no longer an add on but a core driver of the business strategy, operational efficiency, and long term value creation. Your examples of real world corporate practices, frameworks, and challenges have truly enriched our understanding. The directions the discussion today reminded us that embedding ESG is not just about compliance, but about culture, accountability, and innovation. As we conclude, let us carry forward the spirit of responsible business, continuous learning, and collaborative action, embedding ESG in operations and not just a mandate. It is shared commitment towards sustainable growth, ethical leadership, and long-term societal value. We invite all participants to join for our upcoming webinar scheduled on Thursday, 13 November 2025 from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., where we will continue exploring critical topics related to sustainability reporting and best practicing. Once again, thank you for your active engagement and thoughtful contributions. Your decision and your dedication of advancing sustainability practices invaluable, and we look forward to your continuous involvement in our ongoing initiatives as we collectively work towards a more sustainable and resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, shall we conclude the meeting?
Yes, tech support,
Yeah.
please go offline. Yes, yes.